My name is Garrison Davis. I'm the Director of Community Energy here at Push Buffalo. I oversee Push Green as well as the Western New York Clean Energy Hub. And so with the Western New York Clean Energy Hub, one of the key things that we do is make sure that our community is energy efficient and making sure that we're saving money on electricity and our utilities. Now, one of the ways that we did this recently was through the Clean Energy Navigator program. Now, the Clean Energy Navigator is a program, a network of nationwide solar and storage learning hubs. And ultimately, through this program, we surveyed the community over the past 6 months around topics on thinking about resiliency and thinking about energy efficiency and how much people spend on energy every single month. Through that, we came up with a couple of different resources for people to learn from. And one of those resources are the slides you're going to see today. But ultimately, we should ask the question, why do we need a network of solar and storage learning hubs? On one hand, right, it's important because there are a lot of new technologies out there. Solar is improving every single year, and granted, it's been around for the past 50 to 70 years or so, but it's getting better every single year, and it's taking new forms every single year. But with that, storage, battery systems are something that's only now becoming popular or becoming widely known and accessible. So there are a lot of new technologies that need to be understood. Not only that, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There are a lot of people who experience or have heard of solar and storage, but when they hear about these things, they're fed information that's not always accurate or correct. And so it's really important for us to dispel some of these misconceptions about these technologies. In addition to that, ultimately it's vital to help inform people about the programs that exist already. There's resources available for us to access solar and storage and build our resiliency and save money on electricity, but ultimately we have to learn about those. And part of this work is making sure that our residents know. Thinking about not only can it save us money on electricity, but it's also posterity. Thinking about the future generations, preserving our landscape for our community and for our children. Ultimately, I don't have any, but some of yours. Yeah. With that, and I think the deeper issue here is that when we think about dirty energy or using non-renewable energy sources, it's really bad for our planet and it's really bad for our health, just as we alluded to. When we think about some of the resources we use now to get our electricity, we're using things like oil and gas in order to generate that energy. And when we use this oil and gas, ultimately we have to burn it, right? And that creates CO2, and a lot of times that CO2 goes into the air and it creates problems in our communities like higher rates of asthma and higher rates of cancer. Not only that, the extraction of these materials actually ruins our natural environment. I mean, not just think about things like fracking, right, which ultimately leads to man-made earthquakes, but when we also think about like a landscape, right, a beautiful landscape, but now it's littered with oil rigs because they're pulling oil and gas out of the landscape. We can't even enjoy our nature because it's littered with these dystopian machines. Finally, the final reason is that eventually it's going to run out. The great thing about renewable resources is that they're renewable. They're constantly coming back, and they come back every day and everywhere. But when it comes to things like oil, there's only a finite amount on the entire earth. And we've tapped into so much that what's left is only harder to access. So, and the more we want to access it, the more expensive it becomes, because ultimately our prices depend on its availability. But the truth of it is right now our society is addicted to these now renewable energy sources. Again, when we think of things like coal, oil, and gas, coal is difficult to access. It's far underground, and we send real people into these very dark, dingy, and dangerous places in order to access this material. So not only does it kill them, right, when coal mine implodes, but as we burn this coal, now we're polluting our air, and it kills us as well, all for our energy. When we think of things like oil and gas, again, it's extracted and it's difficult to access. But even when we take into account certain technologies like nuclear, in some people's perspective, would be clean. But it carries a lot of risk with it. It takes tens and 20 years in order to build just one system. And then in the event of a natural disaster, which we're only going to see more of because of climate change, now these nuclear facilities are at risk of actually melting down and seeing more accidents. We've all heard of Chernobyl. We've all heard of 3 Mile Island. And ultimately, these facilities carry that risk with them every time they power on. Yeah, so ultimately, I want you to think about the US, right? And think of how big it is. We're talking about 3,000 miles, 3 time zones, and 2 oceans that it touches, right? Now, think of how much electricity we need in order to power our entire nation. Now, the thing about that, right, is that not only do we have to generate a lot of electricity, but that electricity has to travel a very far distance. Now, the way our energy system is set up now, you have a few places throughout the country that generate this electricity. And if we're using non-renewable energy sources, this dirty energy, then ultimately these very few resources are being powered 24/7, and they're constantly polluting our communities around the clock. Not only that, like a lot of these same facilities are placed in low and middle income communities and places where people are often forgotten and overlooked. Now, once this electricity is generated, right, now it has to travel a long way. And the way it travels is through wires. But a lot of these wires are also, they were installed a very long time ago. And as a result, they've experienced a lot of wear and tear. Now, mind you, our world is only becoming more electrified, right? Even our solutions, right, when we think of electric cars and things like that, it's more load being put onto the grid, or that's more electricity we need to draw from the grid, right? Which means more non-renewable resources being used, which means more pollution in our communities, and more stress on our infrastructure. But when but as that electricity travels, right, and as that infrastructure starts to decay, what do you think happens to that infrastructure, right? It needs to be fixed ultimately. And just by chance, who do you think has to pay for those fixings? Yep. I see about 50 people. Oh, good one. Yeah. Man, one day. But right now, it's us that has to pay for it. And it's not in a direct way, right? They don't come to us and they say, will you pay for this new power line? No, it comes in the form of higher energy bills, your rate hikes, things like time of use. Like that ultimately is how we end up fixing our grid. Oftentimes they put profit over people and planet, Our relationship with our utilities is extractive. When we think about, what they provide to us, electricity, and that's very helpful, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, their goal is to take money from our community. They're not building playgrounds, they're not building schools, they're extractive in that way. Now, mind you, there is a way for us to actually fight back, right? There's a way for us to feel empowered. And that way is for clean energy, right? We have the opportunity through something called net metering. And net metering is a policy that forces the utility to pay us for electricity we put back onto the grid. If we help you, you pay us, right? But it's in the utility's best interest not to engage with that, right? And as a result, sometimes they endorse policies that hinder the development of renewable energy. Sometimes they decide to gum up the system and prevent systems from going online by creating long queues or long lines of people who want to interconnect to the grid. I won't get too nerdy on you, but there are a lot of different ways that the utility can slow down the access to clean energy. And ultimately, a lot of times they'll end up advocating for policies that prioritize their shareholders over our stakeholders. Now, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, like when these policies pass, the people who are most vulnerable are people like us, people in the low and middle income communities, the ones who are overlooked, the ones who work overtime, the everyday people just like you and me. Now, if we can, let's recap, right? We have now renewable energy sources that are being dug up from the ground in these very unsustainable ways. Then they're being burned, polluting our earth. Then all that electricity is being pushed through wires that are experiencing wear and tear. And when those wires need to be fixed, the cost is then shifted onto us in the form of higher rates and more money coming out of our pocket. But as I alluded to before, there is an opportunity for us. There's a way for us to fight back. And the great thing about these technologies is that they can be spread out, right? Anywhere where the sun shines, anywhere that the wind blows, and anywhere the water runs, we can generate the electricity we need. And with all of this, it's spread out across our nation. We can spread it out in a way that we don't have to depend on electricity being pushed miles and like time zones away, but instead we can focus on generating our electricity at home for our uses and what we use. That means fewer rate hikes, but that also means a more stable system that we don't have to worry about brownouts or blackouts. And one way that we personally can access this, right, is through installing solar on our homes. If you're a homeowner, there's opportunity for you to install solar directly onto your home, and as that solar panel experiences sunshine and generates electricity, then that electricity is used directly on site, and any excess that you use then gets put onto the grid, and you experience net metering, and you can actually make money or see a credit on your bill for that. If you're lucky enough to own a battery, then that battery can also live on site, and that excess electricity can power that battery. That way, when we think about our resiliency, when we think about that giant snowstorm that comes, right, and all the power gets knocked out, now we can survive a little bit easier because we have a battery that's powering our home. Maybe we have a battery that's powering a local community center that's running out food to the people who need it or doing welfare checks. The possibilities are ultimately endless when we think about it. Not all of us are lucky enough to be homeowners, and there are a lot of challenges to solar energy, right? Right now, we're all seeing the fight on tariffs, and panels are getting more expensive as a result. A lot of them come from Asia, right? In addition to that, there are things such as grants, tax rebates, and funding sources available, but if our credit score isn't in the right place, it might be a little difficult to get a loan. And a lot of the grants and tax rebates that do exist are being, frankly, assaulted by a lot of elected officials who are under the thumb of utilities and big oil and gas giants. But that said, right, despite the fact that there are challenges, right, if you're not a homeowner, to getting access to clean energy, like it's still accessible. It doesn't matter if you're a renter. It doesn't matter if you're a homeowner. It doesn't matter on a lot. Let's just say, as long as you pay an electric bill, you have the opportunity to access renewable energy and solar. One of those ways is through something called community solar. Community solar allows people to buy electricity directly from the source rather than purchasing it through the utility. Typically, the utility would go to what's called a power producer or a solar farm, and they'd say, hey, I want to purchase your electricity. They purchase it, and then they turn around and sell it to us at a higher margin, right? Community solar allows you to go directly to that power producer and say, hey, I want to buy it. We're going to cut out the middleman. It's empowering. It gives us opportunity, right? And it gives us savings as a result. There are things such as energy cooperatives, where entire communities come together in order to build and share the cost of building a solar project. Then, as the electricity is generated, it's split among everybody who participated. And when there's excess electricity generated, then the money is also split through net metering. Lastly, there's something called a community choice aggregator, or a CCA. This is a third party, think like a nonprofit or a local government, who will actually go to one of these power producers and bargain on your behalf for lower energy rates. So that's something that, collective bargaining on energy. something that not a lot of people are familiar with, but is completely possible and within our range. Even if you can't access any of these, right, there's still ways that you can save money on electricity and reduce the amount of electricity you're using, right? There's something called an energy audit where someone comes into your home and they tell you exactly where you're losing energy. That means heat escaping through windows, but that also means using energy efficient light bulbs and things that are like able to use less electricity while still giving you, providing you the same needs. Additionally, there are things like weatherizing your home, making sure that there are no cracks beneath the door or between the windows, so that way we're not losing air and continuously needing to heat our home. And there are also things such as smart thermostats that will keep your home warm while you're there and then automatically turn off while you're away. At the end of it, if we use less energy, we can still lower our bills. And if we can access clean energy, then we can lower them even further. So with that said, again, I want to appreciate you all, or I want to thank you all for being here to listen to me and see our presentation, our hard work. My name is Garrison Davis. I am the director at Push Buffalo, director of Community Solar, Community Energy. See, I'm forgetting, I'm lost in the moment, you know? Come on, man. My name is Garrison Davis. I'm the director of Community Energy here at Push Buffalo. I oversee Western New York Clean Energy Hub and Push Green, and I invite you to go onto our website, pushgreen.org, sign up to speak to one of our energy advisors, and we can advise you on your options for clean energy, as well as work to help get you an energy audit and ultimately bring down your energy bills. So thank you so much, and I would love to take some questions.